Masechet Nedarim Daf Samech Gimel. We complete the 8th perek of Nedarim today. We were talking about the Mishnah that someone says, I'm not going to have any wine ad hageshamim. Well, there's machloket, what that means. Hageshamim, since it's plural, so Tanakama says, until ad shetered rebi'ah sheniya, until the second rainfall. Since geshamim is plural, it rains twice. Then he can start having wine. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, however, Rabban Rashbag in the Mishnah said, no, it means until the time of the Rebi'ah, when the second rain usually falls. So it's a set calendar date that we're going to see in a second. Now, about this Mishnah, Rabbi Zera made a limitation. Amar Rabbi Zera, machloket amar ad hageshamim, aval amar ad hageshem, ad zeman geshamim ka'amar. The machloket between Tanakama and Rashbag in the Mishnah is only if he said the word in plural, ad hageshem, I'm not going to have wine until the rains. But if he said until the rain, well, then that surely means the time of the rain. Because no one says until the rain. No one thinks that means the first time it rains. You're talking about the noun as a generality, until the rain season. And so when the rain usually falls, he will be prohibited from wine until then. Now we're going to challenge Rabbi Zera. This question is going to be a long question, even though the answer is going to be quite simple. So we're going to quote actually 3 baraitot to build up the question. Me'tibe, the first one. Ezohi zmana shel rebi'ah. When you say the rain, rebi'ah refers to the early rains. So when are these early rains? They come in 3 stages. Habechira bishlosha, benonit b'shiva afilu be'afila, be'esrim ushlosha dibre Rabbi Meir. The first opinion of Rabbi Meir says that the first rain of the Rebi'ah comes on the 3rd of Cheshvan. Second one on the 7th, and the last of that set comes on the 23rd. So they're all pretty close together, all in Cheshvan. 3rd, 7th, notice there's only 4 days between when you expect the first and second rain. However, Rabbi Yehuda Omer b'shiv'a asar, be'esrimu shlosha. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, the first rain starts a little bit later, on the 7th. So in other words, what was the second stage before, here according to Rabbi Yehuda is the first stage. And the second one is the 17th, so there's 10 days between the first and the second, the 7th and the 17th. And the third one is on the 23rd. However, Rabbi Yosef Omer, he's going to push them all a little bit later. B'shiba asar u'be'esrimu shlosha b'chodesh kislev. The first one is on the 17th. So what was the second for Rabbi Yehuda becomes the first rain on according to Rabbi Yosef. The second one is the 23rd. So notice there's, according to him, Rabbi Yosef, there is 1 week between the first and second rains. That's going to be significant in a minute. And the third one is going to be the beginning of Kislev. Now all this is going to have multiple impacts. One of them is when do the fasts start? If it doesn't rain for a while, first the elders will have fast days, and then if it still doesn't rain, then the whole community will start fasting. So Rabbi Yosef, we confirms what he just said, because he says the individuals, the elders, do not start fasting until Rosh Chodesh Kislev. What we see from here is that he's consistent with his opinion that the first 3 rains we expect to be, the first Rebi'ah, the first 3 stages, we expect to be end on Kislev. So therefore, if it didn't rain yet by Kislev, during Cheshvan, it's still not an emergency. But once Kislev starts, that's when we expect the last of the rains to be of the Revi'ah, so then you would start fast. Then the elders would start fasting. Okay, now based on this Mishnah, this Baraita, when we analyzed it, we said, Bishlama Rebi'ah Rishona Rishael, Shilishit Litanot, Ela Sheniya Lemai, V'amar Rabbi Zera Lenoder. We understand why you have to tell us the first stage of the rain, because that's when we start asking for rain in Eretz Yisrael in the middle of the Amidah. And the third one, we have to know litanot. That's when we start fasting, right? As we just said, that according to Rabbi Yosef, you'll start fasting if it doesn't rain at Kislev. According to the other opinions, whenever the third one is supposed to come and it still doesn't come, that triggers the beginning of the fasts for the elders. Ela sheniya lemai, for what law would we need to know the exact date of the second stage of rain? Oh, we're talking about for someone who makes a vow, meaning someone who says geshamim, right? I'm not going to have any wine until the geshamim. So we said that according to Tanakama, he cannot have wine until the second rain. So that's why we need to know when the second rain is, in case someone makes a vow with that formula. V'amrinan Allah, keman azla ha'adetanya, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel omer, keshamim sheyardu, shiva yamim ze achar ze, ata moneh behen revi'ah rishona ushniya, keman, kerebi Yoseh. And now, yet another statement we said about that baraita. There's actually one baraita and a couple of clarifications that we said saying about that baraita. And the clarification actually is from another baraita. Okay, so according to whom is the following baraita, that Rashbag says that the geshamim that fall 7 days one after the other, you count those as the first rainfall and the second rainfall. Who would that be according to? It could be according to the Bioseh. In other words, we're taking this baraita here and we're correlating it with the first baraita that we quoted above. And so according to whom are there 7 days between the first and second? Well, we saw it wouldn't be according to the first opinion of Rabbi Meir because only 4 days. Rabbi Yehuda has 10 days. The Bioseh is the one that has 1 week between the two. All right, so we see that this baraita here of Rashbag is follows Rabbi Yoseh. All right, now we set up all the stages of our question. The question is that according to Rashbag, someone who says, I'm not going to have wine until Hageshem, in the question stage here, we're assuming he just said Ad Hageshem. The answer will be no, maybe he said Geshamim. Okay, if he said Ad Hageshem, then according to Rashbag, forget the fact that this is Rashbag, you have to explain that this baraita is explaining, even though it's Rashbag, is explaining the opinion of Chachamim in the Mishnah. Okay, there's a couple of assumptions that we have to make for this question to work. Someone who says Ad HaGeshem and cannot have wine until it rains twice, right? That's because it says here Yadu Shiva Yamim Ze Achar Ze, and has to be within 7 days or 7 days apart. Then that's considered 2 rains. And there's not a date here, even though this is correlating it with Rabbi Yoseh, who gave a certain date, but it doesn't say those exact dates, it just says till it rains twice a week apart. Therefore, someone who says Ad HaGeshem, it means till it rains twice. It has to actually rain twice, and doesn't matter when the actual date is. This is a problem for Rabbi Zera, because Rabbi Zera said here that it applies to Noded, and he said up here that when is there a machloket? Only if he said Geshamim. But if he says Ad HaGeshem, then we follow the actual Zeman HaGeshamim, the actual date of when it's supposed to rain, not when it actually rains. So to summarize, the question is, we're assuming that in the Braita that we just quoted, the one who made the vow said Ad HaGeshem. According to the Braita, in the words of Rashbag, but explaining Rabbanan, he has to wait till it actually rains 2 times a week apart. But according to the Bizarah here, if you say Ad HaGeshem, you have to wait till the dates of when you expect it to rain. Not necessarily when it actually rains. That's the question. And the answer is, well, this Baraita doesn't say the words Ad HaGeshem. It says, Ha'uda Amad Ad HaGeshamim. No, this Baraita, the Bizarah can explain, is when he said Geshamim, which is the case of the Mishnah, when he said Ad HaGeshamim, and that's where, according to Tanakama, it's when it rains twice, independent of the actual dates. All right, so that was a simple answer. All right, next Mishnah. Kunam yain sheni to'em lashana nita b'lashana asur ba u'be'ibura. We already saw a preview of this Mishnah on the previous stuff. Someone who says wine will be prohibited to me like a korban to taste for a year. If it's a leap year with 13 months, then it's prohibited during the entire year, including also the second Adar. So this would apply if he says, from now till the rest of the year. and that includes a second Adar, or if he says, I am prohibited from wine for 1 year, which would mean from the calendar date to the calendar date. If today would be Rosh Chodesh Tevet, then he'd be prohibited from now until the next Rosh Chodesh Tevet, whether that meant 12 months or 13 months, should it be a leap year. If a person says, Ad Rosh Chodesh Adar, Ad Rosh Chodesh Adar Rishon, so I'm not going to have wine from now until Rosh Chodesh Adar. If there are 2 Adars, he means until the beginning of the first Adar. Ad Sof Adar Rishon. If he says, I'm not going to have wine until the end of Adar, again here means the end of the first Adar, should there be 2. So you see, according to the Mishnah, the main Adar, if you just say Adar without any qualification, is the first. Alma setamad Adar dekama rishon hu. So, right, stam, just saying without specification, is the first Adar. Now, this happens to be a machloket, so we're going to see our Mishnah follows only one of the following 2 opinions. Lema matintin Rabbi Yehudahi detanya. Adar Rishon koteb Adar Rishon. Adar Sheni koteb Adar Setam. Dibre Rabbi Meir. According to Rabbi Meir, if you're writing a contract or a ketubah or whatever, and you and if it's Adar Rishon, you should write, on the second day of Adar Rishon, if that's what you mean. If it's actually Adar Sheni though, then you can write just Adar. So according to Rabbi Meir, Stam Adar is Adar Sheni. Well, that does not follow our Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Adar Rishon koteb Setam, Adar Sheni koteb Tinyan. Whereas according to Rabbi Yehuda, for the first Adar, you just write nothing. Well, nothing. Adar plain means Adar Rishon. And if it's Adar Sheni, you have to write the second Adar. So you see that this Mishnah must follow Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yehuda only. Now, if whenever possible, we'd always rather that an anonymous Mishnah be according to everyone. So let's see if we can fit this Mishnah even according to Rabbi Meir. By the way, this whole discussion has a lot of significance. For example, if someone dies on a regular Adar, on a non-leap year, when do they observe the Yortzeit? They're going to say Kaddish in a leap year, on Adar Rishon or Adar Sheni, which is the regular Adar. Or someone who has birthdays, bar mitzvah, right? If they're born in a regular Adar, and then their 13th year is a leap year, as the first Adar or second Adar. Okay, so this has a lot of effect. There's a lot of discussion about that. Amar Abaye, hafilu tema Rabbi Meir, hadi adad mi aberashata, hadelayada. I can even explain our Mishnah according to Rabbi Meir. And this Braita that you just quoted, where Rabbi Meir says that the that the second Adar is the plain Adar, that's when he knew from beforehand that there's going to be 2 Adars. He had a fixed set calendar. He looked at the calendar and he says, this year there's going to be 2 Adars. And then he writes in the contract that, I will pay you back in an Adar, since he knows there's going to be 2 Adars. So if he writes Adar Stam, he means the second one. So that's going to be Meir. However, the Mishnah is talking about a case where he didn't know. It wasn't announced, or he didn't look at the calendar, and he didn't know that there's going to be 2 Adars. He thought there's going to be 1 Adar. Since he thought there's only going to be 1 Adar, that's why he meant the first Adar. And that's what the Mishnah is talking about, that Adar Stam is the first Adar, if he doesn't know that there's going to be a second Adar, which makes sense. And we prove that this is so. V'hatanya, not as a question, but v'hatanya b'nichuta, as a baraita that proves this point. Ad Rosh Chodesh Adar, Ad Rosh Chodesh Adar Rishon. Im hayta shana me'uberet, Ad Rosh Chodesh Adar Hasheni. This baraita has 2 parts. If a person makes a vow, I'm not going to have wine until Rosh Chodesh Adar, that means the first Adar. And if it was a leap year, then it means until the beginning of second Adar. Now this doesn't make sense. What do you mean if it was a leap year? Does that mean the first clause of the Braita is when it was not a leap year? If it was not a leap year, then you wouldn't have to say anything until Rosh Chodesh Adar. There is only 1 Adar. So it can't mean that the first clause is not a leap year. Rather, both of them are a leap year. And yet, In one case, you follow Darishon. One case, you follow Darsheni. How can you reconcile these two halves of the Baraita? Shema'mina ha de peshita le de mi'abrashata ha de layada. Rather, it must be that the second clause, when it says if it was a leap year, means if I knew it was a leap year, I know there's going to be 2 Adars, and I say I'm not going to have wine until Rosh Chodesh Adar. Since I know there's going to be 2, I mean the second one. All right, so when I know there's 2, then Stam Adar means the second one. But the Resha is talking about when I didn't know that there's going to be 2, and I said until Rosh Chodesh Adar, in that case I meant, well, the month after Nisan, that means the first one. And so we see from this Baraita that this distinction is necessary, and so we can use it to resolve Rabbi Meir according to the Mishnah. All right, that's the end. And now we're going to have a next Mishnah, and this Mishnah is going to take us all the way till the end of the Perek. There is no Gemara, no commentary on the rest of the Mishnah all the way until the end of the Perek, which is actually very interesting. So here, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Kunam Yain Sheni To'em Ad Sheyeh HaPesach, Lo Yitkaven Zeh Ela Ad Leil HaPesach, so we're continuing our discussion. We saw some cases before. If I say until a certain event, do I mean the beginning of the event or the end of the event? We saw before that it may depend on the formula that you use, right? Until this, until before this, until it will be to the end of it. But in that following examples, it's going to depend on the content and context. So if someone says, I'm not going to have wine, I will not taste wine until Pesach, then he must mean until before Pesach. On Leil Pesach, when you have the Seder and you have the 4 kosot, that's when people usually drink wine. So his point was, I'm not going to have any wine until the 4 kosot, when it's a mitzvah to have wine. So you can assume that's what the person meant, until the beginning of Pesach, because the person would not want to prohibit himself from having the 4 cups of wine. However, Amar Kunam, Basar Sheni To'em Ad Sheyeh Hasom. Someone says, I'm not going to have any meat until the fast day, until Yom Kippur. Well then, eno asur ela ad le'lesom, shelo nitkaven ze ela ad shah shederech bnei adam lechol basar. In that case also, he's prohibited from meat. He's not waiting till the end of Yom Kippur, but also the leil, the evening of the fast, because people generally eat meat before the fast, so they get nice and full. And so the person obviously wanted to prohibit himself from meat until the beginning or even before, but even before the fast starts, when they're doing Sodat Mafseket. Rabbi Yosef ben Omer, Kunam Shum Shani To'em Ad Sheteh Shabbat Eno Asur Ela Ad Lele Shabbat Shentkaven Zeh Ela Ad Shah Shederech Bnei Adam Lechol Beshum. Someone says, I'm not going to taste any garlic until it will be Shabbat. So even though he says until it will be Shabbat, which generally we saw before means the end of Shabbat, but here again, from the context, we know that he means until Friday evening. Because there was a general custom to have garlic on Friday evening, and because it's mitzvah night. Nowadays, if you eat garlic, that will work as a contraception. But back then, garlic was considered to be good luck, and a person will be more fruitful. And so therefore the person had in mind, I'm not going to have garlic during the week, but obviously he meant that on Friday night he will have garlic. So therefore the vow only goes until the beginning of Shabbat. Someone says to his friend, I vow I'm not going to receive benefit from you unless you come and take this gift for your son of 1 quart of wheat and 2 barrels of wine as a gift. In other words, I'm going to take a vow. I'm insisting that I want to give you a gift for your son, and if you don't accept it, then I'm never going to take anything from you. I'm cutting off relations. We're not going to be friends anymore. So in this case, if in the end you refuse the gift, I can undo my vow and still take from you, even without going to a sage to undo the gift, to undo the vow officially. How so? V'yomar lo, kilum amat ela mipnei kebodi, zehu kebodi. You, right, the recipient of this gift, can say to me, why did you take this vow? For my honor? So, right, you wanted me to receive the gift. That's why you took the vow. Well, actually, this is my honor. I would be honored to not accept your gift, right? I'd be more honored that you keep your barrel of your quart of wheat and your 2 barrels of wine, and it's the thought that counts. It's the gesture. I already feel honored just by you offering it. So, since he already feels honored, and that was the whole point of my gift in the first place, so in a way, the vow was fulfilled, right? I succeeded in honoring you, not by giving you the gift, but by offering you the gift and you refusing. And therefore, it's the we don't have to worry about the vow. The if clause of the vow was fulfilled. It's the same as if you received it, and therefore the prohibition does not apply, and I can receive a benefit from you going forward. וכן האומר לחברו כונם שאת נהנית לי, אם את בא ונותן לבני קול של חיטין ושני חביות של יין. Or the same thing other way around. Benefiting from me is prohibited to you. I say, I'm not going to give you any benefit unless you come and give my son a present, right? I'm asking you, my son needs some help, right? Give him a gift. Otherwise, I won't. Otherwise, I'm not going to give you anything. You'll be prohibited from me. So Rabbi Meir Omer, Asur ad she'iten. Rabbi Meir says, then yes, you actually have to give my son something if we don't want the vow prohibition to apply. חכמים אומרים, אף זה יכול להפר את נדרשו על פי חכם, ויאמר לו, הרי אני כאילו נתקבלתי. In this case also, if for whatever reason you end up not giving my son this stuff, still we don't have to go to a chacham, because I can say, I'll consider it as if I have received the gift, right? A person can always waive his right to a monetary obligation. And so even though you didn't actually give it, I'll say, here's my receipt, right? It's like you gave it. You don't have to give it anymore. And therefore, the if clause was fulfilled successfully, and the prohibition of the vow does not apply. היה מסרב בו לשאת בת אחותו, ואמר כונם שהיא נהנית לי לעולם. In Talmudic times, it was praiseworthy for a person to marry his niece. To keep it in the family, right? Take care of your brother or your sister's daughter, rather than to marry her off to some other family. Who knows if they're going to treat her nicely? But this particular uncle, he wants to encourage someone else to marry the niece. And this other guy is like, oh, I don't want to marry her. So you're the uncle. You have the first right. And so the uncle says, my niece is prohibited to benefit from me forever. In other words, there's no way therefore I'm obviously not going to marry her, and so you marry her. Or someone who's divorcing his wife says, benefit to my wife is prohibited forever. He wants to show, right, I'm really divorcing her, you're out, we're separated, we're never getting back together. So he makes a vow, she can have no benefit from me forever. Even though they made these vows, in both cases, this guy can give that woman some benefit, right? Even if they're divorced, for example, but he still may want to give her something for a gift or whatever, or even if it's his niece, right? And let's say his niece goes and marries someone else. Still, maybe he wants to give a birthday present to his niece. He's still allowed to, because when in both of these cases, when he says no benefit from me, he didn't mean all benefit. He meant for the purpose of marriage, ishut, that they won't have relations together, that they won't marry. But other forms of benefit, just to give some food, that they didn't have in mind, so that's permitted. היה מסרב בחברו שיאכל אצלו. אמר כונם לביתך שאני נכנס, טיפת סונן שאני טועם לך, מותר להיכנס לביתו ולשתות ממנו סונן, שלא נתכוון זה אלא לשום אכילה ושתייה. A host is urging someone, so come over, come inside, right? Come and eat something, come have kiddush with me. And the other person is refusing, the guest is refusing, and the guest says, entering your house is prohibited to me. Or even a taste of cold water is prohibited to me. Even though he said that, we don't take his words literally, because when a person is refusing invitation, right, they always mean it in an exaggerated way. So even though he says, I'm not going to enter your house, he can enter the house. And even though he said, I'm not going to have even drink a little bit, he can still drink a little. Because what he meant is, I'm not going to sit down for a full meal of eating and drinking. All right, so, which is typical normal language. And for Nedarim, we follow typical language. And this is typical language, right? If host says, right, come in for kiddush, come have a drink. And the person says, all right, I'll just come in for a second, but I can't eat anything. I can't drink anything. When they mean, of course, if they come in, you can assume that they are going to drink a little. They're going to have something, right? And so he's just saying that a person is always going to say one step less than they're actually going to do. If he says, okay, fine, I'll come in just for a drink, then they mean a drink plus some hors d'oeuvres, right? If he says, I'm going to have just some hors d'oeuvres, then that means he's staying for lunch too. If he says, okay, I'll come for lunch, but then I have to leave, then that means he's going to stay the rest of the day. All right, so we follow the general custom. It's nice to end on these, on inviting guests over and insisting that they come in for a drink and then assuming that they're going to stay. Hazran alach kunam yain.